She wasn't shouting. She wasn't running. Just a well-dressed woman holding a sleeping baby in the middle of a busy airport. But the K9 dog wouldn't stop barking. What did he sense that no one else did? That single moment unraveled a hidden truth involving abduction, manipulation, and a forgotten facility deep in the woods. What followed was a story of silent guardianship, a child's quiet recovery, and a dog who refused to look away when others did. This is not just about instincts. It's about trust, trauma, and a hero who never needed words. Welcome to the story of Shadow. Late afternoon at Ashton Valley Regional Airport carried the quiet hush of lingering winter. Outside the glass walls, a thin curtain of snow drifted across the tarmac like powdered silk. The sky hung low and colorless, a pale gray that pressed gently against the horizon. Inside the terminal, however, the mood was far from calm. Travelers lined up in frustrated rows, voices raised over delayed departures. The scent of burnt coffee mingled with the sharp chemical tang of melted ice clinging to winter boots. Officer Lauren Hayes moved deliberately through the corridor near Gate 3, her gloved hand gripping the leash of her K9 partner Shadow. At 5 years old, Shadow was the kind of dog that made people pause. His coat was a striking mix of black and deep tan, muscles coiled under precise steps. But what made him extraordinary was not his appearance. It was his past. As a pup, he had been discovered in the smoldering wreckage of a mobile home outside Corvallis, lying silently next to the body of an elderly woman who had died in a fire. Shadow refused to leave her side for nearly 2 days until rescuers could reach them. That moment of loyalty had etched something into him, a kind of sixth sense especially attuned to children and the vulnerable. It was that intuition that led to his selection for behavioral threat detection, rather than the more traditional bomb or narcotics work. Shadow did not search for things. He searched for people. Officer Lauren Hayes had served nearly 15 years in law enforcement, most of it in the high-crime districts of Portland. A deeply personal case involving the brief disappearance of her niece had shaken something loose in her. She requested transfer to the K9 unit not just for change but for healing. Her bond with Shadow had grown from shared silence and long patrols into a near telepathic trust. They were passing the baggage claim when Shadow suddenly stopped. His ears lifted, his body stiffened, his eyes locked on something ahead. Lauren followed his gaze and spotted a woman about 20 feet away. She wore a tailored gray coat and moved smoothly through the crowd with a baby bundled tightly against her chest. Her posture was elegant, her features striking with black hair tied neatly in a low bun. The child was wrapped in a soft blue blanket, head slumped on her shoulder, unmoving. Shadow gave a soft whine. Lauren tightened the leash and whispered, "What is it, boy?" But the whine morphed into a low rumble from his throat, a warning he rarely gave. Shadow had been trained to signal subtly, only escalating if the threat felt urgent and real. Lauren stepped forward, her voice firm but calm. "Ma, may I speak with you a moment?" The woman turned, looking surprised but composed. "Yes, of course," she replied, pulling the baby closer. "I'm Officer Hayes, Ashton Kane Unit. My partner is showing concern. Could you tell me your destination and show me your boarding pass?" The woman hesitated briefly. "Certainly. I'm flying to Denver with American Airlines. My name is Cassandra Blake." At that moment, Shadow barked once sharp and loud, then again. Travelers nearby turned their heads, some lifting their phones. Lauren clenched her jaw. "Shadow, quiet," she said, but her voice lacked certainty. The baby had not stirred, not at the barking, not at the sudden shift in movement. Lauren felt her heartbeat quicken. "You said Denver?" she asked. "Yes," Cassandra replied. "Strange," Lauren said slowly. "I was just told American canceled all Denver flights 2 hours ago, due to the storm." Cassandra blinked. "Oh, sorry, I meant United. It has been a long day." Shadow growled again, deeper this time and longer. The baby still had not moved. Lauren was about to press further when her radio crackled to life. The dispatcher spoke with urgency. "Officer Hayes, we just received a bolo from Everidge PD. Missing child, male 2 years old, last seen with a woman matching your description. Possible abduction. Proceed with caution." Lauren felt the blood in her veins pulse like thunder. She looked again at the baby wrapped tightly. The curls peeking from the blanket were soft and brown. The blue fabric matched the one in the bulletin. The woman, Cassandra Blake, now seemed tenser, shifting subtly on her feet. "Mom," Lauren said, her voice unwavering, "I'm going to have to ask you to come with me for a few additional questions." Cassandra lifted her chin. "I do not see the need. I have done nothing wrong. My baby is asleep. We are catching our flight." Shadow stepped forward, blocking her path entirely. his eyes focused not on the woman but the child. Cassandra backed away slightly. "You cannot just accuse me," she snapped. "Please," Lauren said, keeping her tone even. "For the safety of the child, I need your cooperation." Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside the terminal time had narrowed to a thread. One dog, one woman, one child, and a truth waiting to be uncovered. Officer Lauren Hayes led Cassandra Blake toward a quieter section of the terminal near the administrative gate entrance. The surrounding buzz of conversations and rolling luggage faded behind them, replaced by a strained silence drawn taut by unspoken tension. Shadow walked slightly ahead, his posture alert, ears angled forward, his entire frame acting as a silent barrier between the woman and whatever exit she might try to reach. Cassandra walked with careful poise, holding the baby tightly in her arms, as if she could keep the situation under control by sheer will. Lauren studied the infant again. Still not a flicker of movement. No restless shift, no twitch of fingers, no breath stirring the soft edge of the blanket. Most children would stir even in sleep, but this one was still like wax, unmoved, untouched by the noise and motion around him. Lauren stopped beside a set of blue plastic chairs and motioned Cassandra to sit. "Please, ma'am," she said, keeping her voice calm but firm, "I need to ask you for identification." "Yours and the child's." Cassandra hesitated. "I told you we are flying to Denver. My ID is in my handbag. The baby's papers are packed in the checked luggage. You can understand." I hope Lauren nodded. "I do understand, but due to the alert I received, I need to confirm identities right now." Cassandra opened her handbag, a designer piece in soft leather, and retrieved her wallet. Her fingers, elegant and carefully manicured, trembled just enough to betray her nerves. She handed over a Montana driver's license. Lauren examined it. Cassandra Blake, 32 years old, listed in Helena. The Idaho was flawless, perhaps too flawless. Not a single crease, not a scratch, not the faintest wear from everyday use. Either she took immaculate care of her belongings or the card had barely seen daylight. Lauren kept her expression neutral. "You said you were flying American Airlines earlier," she added. "Yes, well," Cassandra said quickly, "I meant United. It has just been a long morning. You also said your husband is meeting you. What is his name?" Cassandra blinked. "David. David Blake. And he is waiting in Chicago." Lauren gave a slow nod, but she had already registered the moment of hesitation, the brief flicker in Cassandra's eyes. Shadow let out a low rumble from deep in his chest. He had shifted just slightly so that he remained between Cassandra and the surrounding space, his focus still locked on the child. The overhead speakers in the terminal chimed. A new arrival was announced somewhere distant. Lauren's radio buzzed again. "This is Unit 12. Be advised, a woman named Margaret Clark is approaching Checkpoint 5. Claims she has visual confirmation of the missing child listed in the Everidge Bolo. Elderly, white, female, gray coat, dark boots." Lauren stood and signaled to another officer at the edge of the concourse. "Bring her here." Moments later, the woman arrived. Short in stature, slightly stooped, with hair the color of winter snow tucked beneath a knit hat. Her face bore the look of someone who had not slept in days. Her name was Margaret Clark. She clutched a folder to her chest containing laminated photographs and medical records. The moment her eyes landed on the child in Cassandra's arms, her steps faltered. "That is him," she whispered. "That is Noah." Cassandra stiffened and instinctively pulled the child closer. Lauren moved between them, holding one hand out for distance. Shadow barked once, loud and decisive, stepping in front of Margaret as if anchoring the space in place. "This is a law enforcement situation," Lauren said firmly. Cassandra's expression cracked slightly. Her composure faltered. Her grip on the baby grew tighter. Lauren's voice softened. "Mom, what is your relationship to the child?" Margaret's voice wavered. "I am his grandmother. His mother passed away 8 months ago. I have full custody. That woman is not in our family. I have never seen her. He has a scar behind his left ear from a dog bite. He fell in the garden when he was 14 months old." Lauren turned to Cassandra. "Ma'am, may I examine the child to confirm that?" Cassandra's eyes flashed. "No, you are scaring him. He is sensitive. We just got him to sleep." Her tone rose and her breathing quickened. Lauren's voice became sharper. "Please allow me to verify this information." Cassandra took one step backward, eyes darting toward the nearest exit. "Do not run," Lauren warned, her tone low but firm. "If you do, I will stop you. My dog will stop you." The air between them crystallized. Time narrowed. And then it happened. Shadow gave a soft, almost mournful whine, the signal he had been trained to give when a child was in distress. Lauren moved carefully, slowly reaching forward. She touched the edge of the blanket and pulled it back. The child's face appeared. brown curls, pale cheeks soft and silent. His skin was unnaturally light. Lauren placed 2 fingers against the boy's wrist. A pulse faint. Breathing shallow. Sedated. Her stomach turned. "What did you give him?" she asked, eyes locked on Cassandra. The woman's throat moved as she swallowed. "Nothing harmful. Just something to help him sleep." "What exactly?" Lauren demanded, now with steel in her voice. "Children's antihistamine," Cassandra whispered, panicked. "Benadryl. I did not want him to cry. I did not want to scare him. I just wanted him quiet." Margaret gasped. Lauren raised her hand to wave in a nearby paramedic team. Shadow moved again, blocking Cassandra as she tried to shift position. His stance said everything. "You are not leaving with that child." The sirens had not yet come, but the storm was already inside the terminal. Paramedic Ben Carter arrived at a swift pace, his dark green uniform slightly dusted with salt from the parking lot outside. He knelt beside the child, placing a small monitor on his wrist and gently checking his pupils. "Low respiratory rate," Ben murmured. "Pupils delayed. We need to transport him immediately." Shadow remained firmly positioned, his eyes never leaving Cassandra, who now sat frozen on the plastic chair, arms rigid around herself. Lauren stood watching every move of the medical team, and then turned to the officer beside her. "Place Cassandra Blake in custody," she said, voice steady. "We will verify everything at the station." The woman did not resist. Her shoulders sagged as if drained of all energy. She did not look like a mother. She looked like a woman unraveling at the seams. Lauren crouched beside Shadow and whispered softly, "You saw it before any of us, didn't you?" The dog leaned slightly into her shoulder, his eyes still sharp and watchful. Snow continued to fall against the glass behind them, turning the windows into veils of drifting white. In the ambulance just beyond the gates, Noah Clark was hooked to monitoring equipment, his small chest rising slowly under the supervision of the EMTs. Lauren stayed at the terminal for another hour, filing statements, coordinating the search for any links between Cassandra and the missing child report. When she finally stepped into the security office, Shadow at her heel, she was met by Deputy Alan Reyes. He was tall, with broad shoulders, a lined face, and a calm demeanor known in Ashton for speaking rarely but always with intention. Alan offered her a short nod. "I just got off the phone with Everidge PD," he said. "Noah Clark reported missing 3 days ago. Custody had been officially transferred to the grandmother, Margaret Clark, after his mother passed. This woman, Cassandra Blake, is not listed anywhere. No family link, no friend status. Nothing." Lauren folded her arms. She drugged the child to keep him quiet. There is more to this than just desperation. Shadow was not just alerting to fear. He was protecting. Alan scratched his jaw. "You ever get the feeling that dogs sense things in people we cannot?" Lauren nodded quietly. "All the time." Before either could speak further, a knock came at the door. A young man stepped inside wearing a reflective airport vest and holding a clipboard. His name tag read Eli Sutton. He looked nervous, shifting on his feet, glancing between them. "I think I might have seen that kid before," Eli said. Lauren turned her attention fully to him. "When?" "Few days ago, Tuesday morning maybe. I was doing a baggage transfer for a private flight. It was a weird setup. Sparse info on the cargo manifest. No passengers listed. Just a woman. I swear it was her. She had a child bundled up tight like this one. Would not let anyone near." Alan stepped forward. "What kind of flight?" "Private charter. Came in light, went out again in less than 24 hours. Ely checked his notes. The luggage was registered under a group called Everpine Psychological Consultants. Lauren felt her chest tighten. "Everpine." Eli nodded. "Yeah, I remember it because people talk about that place. It is supposed to be a retreat center. Out east past the forest line. Big white building, no signs on the road. Gated. They say people come and go at night. Nobody local really knows what they do there." As Eli finished speaking, Shadow let out a low vibrating sound from deep in his throat. His ears lifted, his head turned toward the entrance of the hallway, as if expecting something unseen. Lauren knelt beside him, running her hand along his spine. "You are still tracking something, aren't you, boy?" Shadow licked her hand once, then sat back, eyes locked on the hallway. A moment later, Lauren's phone buzzed. It was the hospital. She answered immediately. The voice of Ben Carter came through, clear but heavy. "We ran a tox panel on the boy. There was Benadryl, as she said, but also traces of clonidine. That is not over-the-counter. It is a prescription sedative strong enough to knock out a toddler completely. He is stable now, but he will be kept for overnight observation." Lauren closed her eyes briefly. Thank you, Ben. I owe you one. After ending the call, she looked at Alan. We need to know who booked that charter and what exactly is happening inside Everpine. I do not think Cassandra acted alone. Alan nodded. I will file for a warrant request. If Everpine is involved, we may be looking at psychological manipulation, maybe even criminal exploitation. Lauren turned her gaze back toward the security window where Cassandra now sat alone in an interview room. Her hands were clasped in her lap, her eyes flicking toward the one-way mirror. Her face was pale, no longer the composed stranger in a luxury coat, but something cracked beneath the surface. She looked up and spoke faintly, her voice carried through the audio feed into the hallway. I did not mean to hurt him. He was supposed to be mine. That is what they told me. Lauren and Alan exchanged a glance. Told you what? Alan asked through the intercom. Cassandra turned her face toward the speaker, her voice trembled. He looked like Charlie. They said I could bring him back. They said he was waiting. Lauren took a breath and stepped into the room. Her tone stayed even, but her posture shifted slightly forward. Who told you that, Cassandra? Cassandra stared down at her trembling hands. The doctor. The one at Everpine. He said souls could return. He showed me photos. Said Noah was born the same day my son died. Same eyes, same mark behind the ear. Shadow growled softly from outside the doorway. Lauren did not tell him to stop. Cassandra, she said gently, do you remember the doctor's name? Cassandra nodded, tears sliding down her cheek. Dr. Victor Kelm. The storm outside had finally stopped, but inside the walls of Ashton something far more disturbing had just begun to unravel. The morning light in Ashton was pale and reluctant. A thin mist still clung to the forest edges as Officer Lauren Hayes guided her cruiser down a winding road east of town. The asphalt narrowed until it became little more than a private drive, hemmed in by tall pines and the heavy silence of early spring. Beside her in the passenger seat, Shadow sat upright, ears perked, nose twitching subtly as if reading something in the air no human could detect. Up ahead, the trees parted, revealing the facility. Everpine's psychological consultant stood quiet and symmetrical at the edge of a shallow bluff. The building looked more like a luxury lodge than a medical center, its walls paneled with dark cedar and stone, wide windows catching faint light. There were no signs, no welcoming message, no hint of its purpose except for a discreet keypad at the gate and a surveillance camera blinking red. Lauren felt that same cold instinct in her spine that she had felt in the terminal when Shadow first barked. Something was wrong here. The building's orderliness was too careful. Its stillness too measured. She parked and stepped out, Shadow following close behind. The gate buzzed open after a short delay. Inside the lobby, soft music played from recessed speakers. Instrumental, soothing, calculated. A woman sat at the reception desk. She was young, pale, with light hazel eyes and shoulder-length ash blonde hair tucked behind both ears. Her name tag read Sophie Lang. Lauren approached slowly, flashing her badge. Officer Lauren Hayes, Ashton Police Department. I am here to review records regarding a patient named Cassandra Blake. Sophie's lips parted, but her voice stumbled slightly. I am sorry, officer. We do not release patient files without a court-authorized warrant. Lauren held up the folder in her hand. I have it. Also, this is Shadow. He is a certified service partner. Sophie's eyes flicked to the German shepherd, and Lauren did not miss the slight tension in her posture. Shadow stood completely still, staring at Sophie with an unblinking gaze. His presence was silent but heavy. Sophie glanced back at her computer mouse, then looked up again. I will notify Dr. Kelm's assistant, she said. He is not in today, but his office should have the files. Actually, Lauren replied, I would like you to take me there directly. Sophie hesitated. Of course. This way. The hallway beyond the lobby was minimalist and sterile. Frosted glass doors lined the walls with labels like Restoration Suite and Grief Reframing. Every detail was curated to project calm. But Shadow's ears twitched constantly. His nose lifted. His paws moved with quiet caution. As they passed one particular room, Shadow stopped. His head tilted and he let out a low huff. Lauren noted the sign on the door. Creative Regression Therapy. She said nothing but logged the detail. They continued until they reached Dr. Victor Kelm's office. It was immaculate. Dark wood shelves, soft lighting, a framed painting of a winter forest. The desk was clean, no paper out of place. Behind it, a cabinet with a key lock. "Do you know where Cassandra's file is?" Lauren asked. Sophie looked away. Dr. Kelm kept certain files separate. He said it was to protect client privacy. "Open it, please." Sophie retrieved a small key from behind a bookcase. Her fingers shook slightly as she inserted it. The cabinet opened with a click. Inside were files tied with colored ribbons. Lauren pulled them out carefully, flipping through until she found the one marked Blake C. She untied it and laid the contents on the desk. Standard intake forms, trauma history, a list of medications. But tucked between the official pages were handwritten notes in slanted cursive on unmarked paper. Lauren had seen this handwriting before. In old scanned journals from a case database under Dr. Kelm's name. It was obsessive, looped, and controlled. Subject demonstrates identity fragility and grief delusion. Suggests guided substitution framework. Connect loss object with surrogate child. Lauren's stomach turned. This was not treatment. This was narrative engineering. She turned to Sophie. "Have you seen these before?" Sophie flinched. He said it was theoretical. He said it helped the mothers heal. Reframing grief as something they could carry forward. "Did he ask you to help facilitate?" Sophie's voice dropped. "He told me to follow protocol. Never question it. Said I would lose my job if I didn't." Shadow took a single step forward. His eyes never left Sophie's face. Lauren leaned in. "Did he ask you to give medication?" Sophie nodded slowly. "I thought it was anxiety pills. I did not see the labels. He told me it was safe. He said I was helping." Lauren straightened. "You can help now, but you need to come with me. You need to testify." Sophie looked down at her hands. For a moment she didn't move. Then Shadow did something unexpected. He walked forward and gently pressed his head into her hand. She froze. Then slowly her fingers curled into his fur. A breath escaped her chest, as if releasing something she had been holding for years. "I will do it," she whispered. "I will tell everything." Back at the Ashton Police Department, Lauren sat in a small records room lit by a single overhead bulb. Dusty files surrounded her on all sides, stacked on metal shelves and worn desks. Shadow lay curled beside her chair, his breathing slow but his eyes open, always scanning. Sophie Lang sat across from her, wrapped in a department-issued gray fleece. Her hands curled around a paper cup of coffee she had barely touched. Her eyes followed the folders Lauren laid out, one after another, each marked with dates, names, and a trail of inconsistencies that no one had dared question until now. Margaret Clark waited quietly in the hallway outside. She held a small envelope, worn at the edges, with a faded postmark from nearly 4 years ago. Inside was a photograph. It showed a laughing toddler not more than 10 months old reaching for something out of frame. Standing nearby, almost like a shadow in the background, was a younger Shadow himself, his ears perked and tongue lolling in a happy pant. Lauren studied the image. "He has been watching over Noah longer than we realized," Margaret said softly. Lauren nodded. "And he is not finished yet." They moved to the interview room where Sophie began detailing everything she had witnessed over the past year at Everpine. She described long therapy sessions where grieving mothers were encouraged to rewrite their trauma. They were shown photos of children and told these children shared spiritual connections with their lost ones. They were given drugs to sleep, sometimes to forget, sometimes to remember things that never happened. Dr. Victor Kelm had called it progressive therapy. But to Sophie, it had begun to feel like something else entirely. Manipulation. Exploitation. A performance wrapped in the language of healing. Lauren leaned against the cold wall, listening to every word, knowing they needed more than stories. They needed evidence. That evening, under the pale blue cast of twilight, Lauren and Detective Jonah Wells arrived at Dr. Kelm's residence with a warrant in hand. The house sat on the edge of the forest just north of town. Its design mirrored the Everpine facility, modern wood and stone, expansive glass, and a silence that felt curated. Kendra stood waiting by the driveway, pale and anxious but resolute. She wore a sheriff's department coat too large for her frame, her blonde hair tied back. She pointed toward the study. "The entrance is behind the bookshelf. He told me it was for wine storage, but no one was allowed inside." The 4-person tactical team swept the house quickly. It was immaculate. Every surface clean. Every piece of furniture arranged like a catalog image, but Shadow's pace changed the moment they entered. His body tensed, and he moved toward the rear hallway with quiet precision. They reached the study. Leather chairs, A polished desk. Shelves of unread books. Kendra moved to the bookshelf, hesitated, then pressed a hidden latch beneath the lowest shelf. A soft click. The shelf shifted slightly forward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air turned colder with each step. Lauren flicked on her flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, revealing stone walls and steel shelving. At the bottom, they found a room no larger than a garage. But what it contained sent a chill through every officer present. A nursery had been staged in perfect silence. A white crib, a yellow mobile, a soft rocking chair with a folded quilt, shelves lined with baby bottles, plush toys, and unopened books. Everything was too perfect, too untouched. Like a set waiting for a scene that had not yet been acted. Shadow let out a low growl, steady and deep. He turned his body toward the far corner. There, beside a rusted filing cabinet, stood a steel locker with a keypad. Jonah called for the code breaker. But Shadow moved again, this time toward a wooden cabinet on the floor. He lowered his nose, then gave a sharp bark, his alert signal. Jonah crouched and opened the cabinet carefully. Beneath a false base, they found rows of thumb drives wrapped in plastic and labeled with initials and dates. Bag everything, Lauren ordered. They returned to the station with the evidence secured in a locked analysis room. One by one, Lauren reviewed the contents of each drive. Therapy session recordings, one after another, each nearly identical, grieving women. Dimly lit rooms, Dr. Kelm's voice soft and guiding. He told them their pain could be restructured, that their loss had meaning, that somewhere in the world their child's soul waited to be reborn. One video showed Sophie in the background preparing a syringe. Dr. Kelm's voice echoed from off-camera. 2 drops only. It will open her subconscious. Sophie hesitated, then followed the instruction. In the evidence room, Sophie sat beside Lauren, wrapped in silence. When she saw her image on the screen, her face crumbled. "I did not know," she whispered. "I thought it was anxiety medication." He said I was helping. Lauren placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You were manipulated. Just like the mothers he targeted." Sophie's voice trembled. "I will testify. I will say everything." Outside the room, Shadow lay with his head on his paws, watching. Always watching. The interrogation room at the Ashton Police Department was sterile and gray, the kind of place designed to strip away pretense. Officer Lauren Hayes stood behind the one-way glass, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the man sitting at the metal table. Dr. Victor Kelm looked untouched by the cold grayness around him. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed back, his wool coat perfectly tailored over a cream-colored sweater. He sat with his hands folded on the table, posture upright, expression unreadable. But beneath his calm was something Lauren had seen before in others who wore their control like armor, a quiet belief that they were untouchable. Across from him sat Detective Jonah Wells, a quiet presence known for asking fewer questions than most but always the right ones. He leaned back in his chair, letting the silence settle. Seconds passed. Then Victor spoke. "I assume this is about Cassandra Blake." Jonah gave a small nod. "And the boy?" "Noah Clark." Victor laced his fingers slowly. "You have no evidence of wrongdoing. Cassandra was a grieving mother. I offered her guidance. She was fragile. Yes, but she was also willing. Everything was voluntary." Lauren opened the door and entered, Shadow following close behind. The moment Victor saw the dog, his eyes narrowed slightly. Not fear exactly, but something colder. Calculation. Lauren took the chair across from him. Shadow sat beside her, still and alert. "We have your notes," Lauren said quietly. "Handwritten instructions detailing your use of surrogate therapy, spiritual substitution, and guided delusion. Notes where you referred to Noah as a matched object." Victor's voice remained smooth. "Reframing grief is a legitimate therapeutic method. You will find similar practices in holistic trauma work. Not when it leads to sedated children and false identities," Lauren replied. Shadow stood. His body shifted. Ears forward. Stance widened. His head lowered slightly, his weight centered. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Victor kept his expression neutral but leaned back in his chair. "Your dog does not seem entirely stable." "Shadow does not react unless there is danger," Lauren said. "And he has never been wrong." The growl deepened. Jonah tapped the table once and stood. He gave Lauren a slight nod before leaving the room. Outside, officers moved quietly down the hallway, preparing a case file thick with statements, digital evidence, and recorded testimony. Inside the room, Victor's hands twitched once. Lauren noticed. "We spoke to Sophie Lang," she said. "We have her statement. We have the drives. We have video of you instructing her to administer an unknown substance." Victor's calm cracked for half a second. She was an assistant. She knew what she was doing. "You told her it was anxiety medication. You told her the mothers were healing. You were scripting trauma for performance." "No one forced them," Victor said sharply. "They came to me broken. I gave them something to hold on to." "You gave them a lie," Lauren said. "You replaced their grief with obsession. You convinced them their children could return." Victor looked at Shadow. "And yet the boy is alive. He is safe. If not for your dog, this conversation would not even be happening." Lauren's jaw tightened. "That boy is safe because Shadow barked when everyone else stayed silent. Because he saw what no one else wanted to admit. Because he was willing to stand in the middle of a crowd and say something was wrong." Shadow stepped forward. One deliberate motion. He did not bark. He did not lunge. He simply stood between Lauren and Victor with a presence that felt larger than his body. Victor's voice dropped lower. "You want to believe dogs can sense guilt? That they can weigh morality? They cannot. They react to fear. They read signals. They are just animals." "Then explain why he never moved away from Noah," Lauren said. "Not once. Not in the ambulance. Not at the hospital. Not when the boy cried. Not when the doctors came. Only when he heard your name did he growl." She stood. "We will be charging you with unlawful sedation of a minor, psychological manipulation, and conspiracy to abduct. And that is only the beginning." As she opened the door, Victor's voice stopped her. "They needed to believe. That is what grief does. It creates space for impossible stories. You and your dog can play heroes, but all I ever did was give them something to hold on to." Lauren looked back at him. "You built a house out of pain, and you called it healing." Outside in the hallway, Shadow walked quietly beside her. Jonah waited with a file in his hand. They looked at each other, not needing words. The truth had been spoken, but the echoes of it were still moving, and far beyond the station, in a quiet hospital room, a child was learning how to feel safe again. The pediatric wing of Ashton Regional Medical Center smelled faintly of lavender hand soap and disinfectant. It was quiet now. The chaos of the past few days had lifted like a fog, leaving behind a hush of healing and tired hope. Sunlight streamed through tall windows in golden bands across the linoleum floors. Outside, the first signs of spring had started to bloom in the hospital garden. Officer Lauren Hayes stood by the doorway of room 312. Her K-9 uniform was clean but wrinkled, her face tired but calm. Her auburn hair had slipped slightly from its usual tight bun. She looked into the room in silence. On the hospital bed, little Noah Clark lay curled beneath a navy blanket printed with white stars. His cheeks had regained color, and his chest rose and fell with soft, steady breaths. The sedatives were gone from his system. He was alert now, though quiet, his eyes following movement with slow, uncertain attention. On the chair near the bed sat Nurse Dana Lynn, a kind woman with dark curls and a quiet voice. She adjusted the IV line gently. Noah didn't flinch. He simply watched her with the distant gaze of a child who had seen more than words could hold. Shadow sat near the foot of the bed. He had not left the room since Noah was admitted. He lay in his calm, sphinx-like position, head up, ears gently flicking at small noises. He did not bark. He did not move much. But he was always there. Margaret Clark stood just outside the glass panel. She wore a pale blue blouse and gray slacks. Her silver hair was tied back in a simple twist. In her hands, she held a worn plush bear with one ear torn and threads fraying at the seams. Her knuckles were white around it. Lauren approached slowly. "He has been stable for 2 days," she said gently. "No signs of regression. All the scans are clear." Margaret did not respond. Her eyes stayed locked on the small boy inside. "Do you think he remembers me?" she asked after a moment. Lauren paused. "I think he remembers what safety feels like, and he knows it came from you." Inside the room, Shadow stood slowly. He walked across the tile floor with deliberate grace and sat beside the bed. Noah turned his head. His eyes found the dog. For a long moment he just stared. His small face held no fear, only something searching. Recognition not of words but of presence. Slowly, one small hand reached out. It was tentative at first, like testing a memory. Then his fingers brushed the top of Shadow's fur. Noah blinked. And then he laughed. A small, high sound like a bell ringing far off. It was the first sound he had made since being found. "Ra," he said. Margaret's knees gave slightly. Lauren caught her gently by the elbow. "I am here," Margaret whispered. "I am here, baby." Inside the room, Nurse Dana stepped back. Shadow leaned gently into Noah's side, his nose touching the boy's palm. Noah wrapped his arms around the dog's neck and pressed his face into his fur. For the first time in days, the child clung not out of fear but out of familiarity, as if something lost had returned. Dr. Harland entered a few minutes later. He was a soft-spoken man in his early 40s with a kind expression and navy blue scrubs. He checked the chart and spoke with the quiet certainty of someone who had seen both miracles and heartbreak. "He is recovering well," he said. "Physically, he is strong. What comes next is emotional. But the hardest part is already behind him." Margaret stepped into the room. At first, Noah stiffened. His arms held tighter to the bear now tucked against his chest. Shadow moved between them briefly, not as a barrier but as a guide. He gave a low huff and nudged Margaret forward with his shoulder. Margaret knelt by the bed. "Toby," she whispered. "It's Grandma. You remember?" The boy blinked, his brow furrowed. She lifted the bear slightly. The one-eared toy, the one he had slept with for months before everything had changed. His eyes lit. He reached for it. "My bear," he whispered. Then, after a breath, "Grandma." The word was soft but sure. Margaret reached forward and gently wrapped her arms around him. He leaned into her. The bear was pressed between them. Shadow stayed close, watching but calm. For a few long seconds, no one in the room moved. The silence was not empty. It was sacred. Outside, Lauren stepped into the hallway. Beside her stood Sophie Lang. The young woman had been placed under temporary protective supervision, but had requested to come to the hospital. She kept her distance from the room but watched with wide, glistening eyes. "He is safe now," Sophie whispered. Lauren nodded. "Because of you." "I just wish I had spoken up sooner," Sophie said. "You did," Lauren replied, "when it mattered." Shadow stepped out beside them. His tail flicked gently once. He brushed against Lauren's leg and sat beside her. She looked down. "You knew before any of us," she said softly. "You always know." And in that moment she realized something had changed. Not just for Noah, not just for Margaret, but for all of them. Because in a world that often moves too fast to hear the quietest voices, it had taken a dog's silence and a child's laughter to remind them what was worth listening to. A week later, spring had arrived fully in Ashton. The last patches of snow had melted into the soil, and the scent of fresh pine drifted on the breeze. In the community park behind the old library, children ran across the grass, their laughter ringing out beneath budding trees. The world had moved on, but something sacred remained. Noah Clark, now 3 years old, played in the sun with a quiet joy that seemed older than his age. His curls bounced as he chased a yellow tennis ball across the open field, arms too small but determination too large. Each time he threw the ball, a dark shape followed it with perfect focus. Shadow ran like light across the green. The German Shepherd caught the ball mid-bounce, trotted back and dropped it gently at Noah's feet before nudging him with his nose. The boy squealed and wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. On a wooden bench beneath a birch tree, Margaret Clark sat in a lavender cardigan with her notebook in her lap. Her hands no longer trembled. Her eyes watched the boy with the steady peace of someone who had walked through fire and come out breathing. The notebook was filled with names, phone numbers, and planned small beginnings of something new. Beside her sat Lauren Hayes. Out of uniform now, she wore a soft green shirt beneath a denim jacket and neff. Her face had changed in subtle ways, softer around the eyes, shoulders not so tight. She smiled faintly as she watched Noah run and fall and laugh again. "Do you ever wonder," Margaret asked, "what would have happened if Shadow hadn't barked?" "Every day," Lauren answered. "And then I remember he always knew." The town of Ashton had honored Shadow in a quiet ceremony the week before. Officers from multiple counties attended along with teachers, children, and parents. He was officially named K9 of the Year. Lauren had given the speech. She had stood at the podium, voice steady despite the shimmer in her eyes. He was never trained to detect danger in people, she had said. But somehow, after all he endured, he became a protector anyway, a silent guardian. For Noah. For all of us. Shadow had not worn his medal since that day. He didn't need it. His reward was in the field before him, the boy who trusted him, the grandmother who carried hope, and the community that now believed. "What about you?" Margaret asked gently. "What comes next?" Lauren exhaled. "I've accepted a transfer. A new unit is forming at the state level focused on missing persons and endangered children. I'll be part of the core team. It means travel. Long cases. But I can't turn away from what we uncovered. Not after this." "You're meant for it," Margaret said. "Just like Shadow was meant for Noah." Lauren looked over at the field. "How's the new project coming?" Margaret's eyes lit. She flipped open the notebook to the first page. At the top, written in bold letters, were the words "Shadow's Refuge." "We signed the lease on the old vet clinic downtown," she said. "Volunteers are already lining up. Trainers. Therapists. Foster families. We take in rescues. Dogs like Shadow. Not just strays. Survivors. Just like the kids who'll meet them." Lauren smiled. "That's going to change lives." They sat in silence for a long moment. Across the field, Noah flopped onto the grass with a thump. Shadow dropped beside him. The boy sprawled across his back like a little kitten. The dog didn't move. He simply lay still, tail flicking gently. Lauren lifted her phone and took a photo. Just one more moment. One more thread in a story that had begun in silence and nearly ended in tragedy. 5 more minutes, Margaret called. Noah lifted his head, cheeks pink from the sun. "Okay, Grandma." He scrambled up, grabbed the ball, and hurled it with all. Shadow chased. Lauren watched them run, boy and dog, toward a horizon made golden by afternoon light. "We never gave up on him," she murmured. "And he never gave up on us." "Because some guardians don't need to speak to be heard," Margaret whispered. In the middle of the field, Shadow paused, ball in mouth, and looked back. And for just a moment it felt like he understood every word. Sometimes grace arrives not with wings but with fur and eyes that see what no one else will. Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was the bridge between silence and salvation, the one who stood still when everyone else looked away. And in a world where darkness hides in plain sight, he chose to bark. Thank you for staying with us through this powerful story. If it moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the quiet heroes in your own life, we invite you to support the channel. Subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who believes in second chances and silent guardians. There are more stories like this waiting to be told, and we'd love to have you with us when they are. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, and never ignore the bark that breaks the silence.